I always thought I knew every inch of my home, every room, every nook, every cranny. But what I discovered lurking in the shadows was beyond my wildest nightmares. It all began innocently enough, a typical day like any other. Little did I know that day would forever change my life. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon, and I decided to finally clean up the dusty attic. As I rummaged through old boxes filled with memories, I stumbled upon an odd-looking key. It was unlike any I had seen before, ancient and heavy in my hand. Intrigued, I set out to find the lock it belonged to. After searching for what felt like an eternity, I found a concealed wooden door hidden behind some clutter in the corner of the attic. The key fit perfectly into the lock, and with a creak the door swung open. A gust of icy wind blew out of the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. Hesitant but drawn by an unexplainable force, I stepped inside and the door shut behind me, sealing me within the hidden room. The air was suffocating, thick with an eerie silence. It felt as though the room had been untouched for centuries. I reached for the light switch, but to my dismay there was none. Panic gripped my heart as I fumbled around in the darkness, desperate to find my way back out. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper like a distant echo.
"Leave,"
the voice murmured, barely audible. It seemed to come from all directions, reverberating within the walls. My heart pounded in my chest as I called out, "Who's there?" Silence followed my question, and for a moment I thought I might have imagined it. But then, a cold hand brushed against my shoulder, and a chill ran down my spine. I turned around, but there was no one there. Only darkness surrounded me, and the feeling of being watched sent a shiver down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to run as far away from that room as possible, but something held me captive. As minutes turned into hours, I became aware of a strange sensation crawling up my legs. Glancing down, I saw tendrils of shadows inching their way toward me. Fear consumed me, and I struggled to break free, but the shadows wrapped around my limbs like icy chains. The room itself seemed to come alive, the walls shifting and contorting as if it had a malevolent will of its own. Flickering candles appeared out of nowhere, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and a chilling wind moaned through the cracks. In that moment, I knew I had stumbled upon something beyond comprehension, a malevolent force trapped within the hidden room. It hungered for souls, and I had unknowingly walked into its grasp. As the shadows tightened their grip, I felt a cold, clammy hand encircle my throat, suffocating me. My vision blurred and I struggled to catch my breath. Panic surged through me as I realized I might never escape this haunted room. In my desperation, I clutched the key I had found in the attic, hoping it held some power against this malevolence. With the last ounce of strength, I thrust the key into the lock and the door swung open. The shadows recoiled and I stumbled out of the room, gasping for air. As I shut the door behind me, I heard the whispering grow fainter, the malevolence contained once more. That hidden haunted room would remain locked forever, a dark secret within my home. But the experience would haunt me for the rest of my life. I learned that some doors are best left unopened, some secrets better left undiscovered. For within the shadows, unspeakable horrors dwell, waiting for a chance to ensnare unsuspecting souls. And I had come dangerously close to becoming one of them. I had always felt a strange presence in my old Victorian home. The creaking floorboards and flickering lights were a constant reminder of its age and history. But it wasn't until I stumbled upon a hidden room that my life took a chilling turn. One rainy evening, as I was rummaging through the attic, I noticed a loose floorboard beneath an old chest. As I lifted the floorboard, I discovered a small, concealed space underneath. With trembling hands, I descended into the hidden room. The air was heavy, laden with a sense of sorrow and despair that made my skin prickle with unease. The room was small and dimly lit by a single flickering candle on a dusty old desk. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something that froze me in my tracks. Faint outlines of ghostly figures trapped within the room's walls. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. One of the apparitions turned its translucent face toward me, its eyes hollow and filled with a haunting sadness. "We are the lost souls trapped in this cursed room," it replied, its voice echoing in my mind. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. "How did you end up here? Can I help you find peace?" The souls' voices intertwined, recounting their tragic tales of sorrow and despair. They were victims of a malevolent sorcerer who had used dark magic to imprison their spirits within the walls. The sorcerer had long perished, but his sinister spell still bound them to this wretched room. Determined to help them find peace, I delved into books on ancient rituals and conjurations, seeking a way to break the sorcerer's curse. Days turned into weeks as I studied the arcane texts, performing the rituals, and communing with the trapped souls. But as I made progress, I began to sense a malevolent presence watching me. Objects moved on their own, and chilling whispers echoed through the halls at night. The house itself seemed to protest my actions, and I knew that something dark was stirring within the hidden room. One fateful night, as I performed a particularly intricate ritual, the presence in the house grew stronger. The walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, and the flickering candle in the hidden room blazed into an unnatural crimson fire. Fear gripped my heart, but I pressed on, determined to break the curse. The lost souls pleaded with me to hurry, as they felt an ominous force closing in on them. Finally, as the last incantation left my lips, the walls of the hidden room shook violently. A dark vortex appeared in the center of the room, threatening to consume everything in its path. The trapped souls cried out in agony, their ghostly forms swirling in the vortex's grip. In a moment of desperation, I reached out and grabbed the hands of the lost souls. The vortex fought against my grasp, but I held on with all my strength, refusing to let go. The room quaked with fury, and the malevolent presence in the house intensified. It became clear that the dark force responsible for trapping the souls was fighting to maintain its hold. I could feel my own life force draining away as I struggled against the darkness. The soul's pain became my own, and a haunting chorus of tormented cries echoed through my mind. Just when I thought I couldn't hold on any longer, a blinding light erupted from the vortex. The dark force let out a horrifying shriek, and the hidden room trembled as if a great battle was taking place within its very walls. With one final surge of energy, the vortex collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. The malevolent presence in the house vanished, and the hidden room returned to its dormant state. Exhausted and drained, I slumped to the floor, my body trembling with both relief and sorrow. The lost souls were finally free, their spirits released from their spectral prison. In the following days, the house regained its tranquility. The creaking floorboards and flickering lights no longer held an eerie air, as if the house itself was grateful for the release of its tormented guests. As time passed, the memory of that harrowing night haunted me, but I took solace in knowing that I had freed the lost souls from their eternal torment. Their gratitude was palpable, and I felt a sense of peace knowing that their spirits were finally at rest. The hidden room remained a secret, known only to me and the souls it once imprisoned. I decided to keep it that way, understanding that some mysteries are best left unsolved. Life returned to normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the hidden room had changed me forever. It had taught me the true power of compassion and sacrifice, and I realized that sometimes the most haunting stories are the ones that lead us to confront the darkness within ourselves and find the strength to overcome it. I've always been drawn to old houses, fascinated by their history and the secrets they hold. When I inherited my great-grandmother's Tudor mansion, I couldn't wait to explore every nook and cranny. Little did I know that my curiosity would lead me to discover a hidden room, one that held a haunting secret. As I settled into my new home, strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors creaked on their own and whispers echoed through empty hallways. At first, I brushed them off as mere quirks of an old house. But as the days passed, the incidents intensified, and I couldn't ignore the eerie feeling that I was not alone. One stormy night, as the rain tapped relentlessly on the windows, a chilling draft led me to a peculiar section of the mansion's library. I followed the chilling breeze, and to my surprise, a bookshelf slowly slid aside, revealing a hidden passage. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation as I ventured into the dark unknown. A flickering candle illuminated the passage, guiding me towards a wooden door at the end. As I pushed it open, the musty smell of aged wood filled my nostrils. Before me lay a long-forgotten room, trapped in time, frozen in the horrors of the past. Inside, the walls were adorned with unsettling portraits of long-gone faces, their eyes following my every move. A faded, tattered journal rested on an antique writing desk. As I opened it, the first word sent a shiver down my spine. The Room of Souls, a sanctuary for the lost. The journal detailed the sinister purpose of this hidden room. My great-grandmother had believed that spirits resided within the walls, trapped between worlds, waiting to find peace. I scoffed at the notion, thinking it to be mere superstition. However, as the nights wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced along the walls, and eerie apparitions floated before my eyes, vanishing as soon as I blinked. I sought answers, delving deeper into my family's history, only to find chilling tales of tragedy and despair. One evening, as I tried to unravel the room's mysteries, a ghostly figure appeared before me. The woman's hollow eyes bore into my soul as she reached out with transparent hands. I froze, unable to move, consumed by fear and disbelief. She spoke not in words but in haunting whispers that reverberated through my mind. Memories of her painful past flooded my thoughts. She was a tormented spirit seeking solace and redemption. Her presence was a chilling reminder that the room held a dark secret and the souls trapped within longed for release. Determined to uncover the truth, I began conducting rituals to communicate with the spirits. With each attempt, the activity within the room escalated, doors slamming shut, objects flying across the room, and eerie wails piercing the air. It was as if the spirits were growing restless, demanding to be heard. Fear gripped my heart, but compassion for the tormented souls urged me to continue. With the help of a psychic medium, I attempted to free the trapped spirits from their eternal torment. As we conducted the ritual, the room grew darker, the atmosphere heavier, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted, and a sense of peace washed over the room. The souls had been released, their ethereal forms vanishing into the beyond. As the medium and I stepped outside, the hidden room sealed itself shut, leaving no trace of its existence behind. Since that fateful night, the mansion has been eerily quiet. The haunting ceased, and the hidden room faded into myth. But I can never forget the secrets it held or the souls I set free. My great-grandmother's mansion now stands as a reminder that the past can linger, and some secrets are better left buried in the shadows. In the small, quaint house that had been our family's haven for years, an air of unease began to settle. It was as though the walls held secrets they were desperate to reveal. My wife, Ashley, and I tried to dismiss the feeling as mere imagination, but the events that followed made it impossible to ignore. One evening, as we gathered around the dinner table with our young daughter Hazel, a haunting cry for help echoed through the house. We froze, exchanging bewildered glances. "Did you hear that?" Ashley whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Hazel clung to my arm, her innocent face pale with fright. "What was that, Daddy?" "I don't know, sweetheart," I said, trying to hide my own unease. "Maybe it's just the wind." But even as I said those words, I knew it couldn't have been the wind. The cry sounded so human, so desperate. As the days passed, the eerie cries persisted, always at night when darkness wrapped its fingers around our home. They seemed to come from all directions, as if the very walls themselves were whispering in anguish. Our nights became restless, with sleep eluding us. Ashley and I would lie awake, listening to the haunting echoes. They seemed to grow louder, more insistent with each passing night. Unable to bear the torment any longer, we decided to investigate the source of the cries. Ashley reached out to a local historian, hoping to uncover any dark secrets tied to our house's past. The historian's response was grim. "There have been tales of a tragic incident that occurred in your house many years ago," he said somberly. "A family lived there, and one night their daughter went missing. They searched the entire house but couldn't find her. It was as though she vanished without a trace." My heart sank as I listened to the chilling story. The historian continued. "Legend has it that her cries for help were heard by the neighbors that night, but they couldn't find her either. The girl was never seen again, and the family moved away, leaving the house abandoned." Ashley and I exchanged horrified glances. Could it be that the cries we were hearing were the echoes of a tragedy long past, the desperate plea of a lost soul? Determined to find answers, we decided to conduct our own investigation. We discovered an old, dusty box in the attic filled with faded photographs and journals belonging to the previous owners. As we pored over the contents, we found evidence of the girl's existence, her smiling face in photographs, her handwritten notes about her dreams and fears. In one journal entry, the girl wrote about a secret hiding place in the house, a place she used to play when she was scared. Our hearts sank as we realized that the hidden room might hold the key to the haunting cries. Armed with a sense of purpose, we began to search the house, looking for any signs of a concealed space. And then, in the corner of the basement, we found it. A small hidden door, barely noticeable amidst the cobwebs and darkness. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. I hesitated for a moment, the weight of the past pressing down on me, but the cries for help had become more desperate, and we knew we had to confront the truth. As we descended into the hidden depths of the house, the air grew colder and the cries intensified. It was as though the girl's spirit was guiding us to her final resting place. In a small, dimly lit chamber, we found her, the ghostly figure of a young girl, dressed in the clothes of a bygone era. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, and her transparent form seemed to flicker like a candle in the wind. Are you the girl who went missing all those years ago?" I asked, my voice trembling. She nodded, her ethereal presence sending shivers down my spine. "Yes, I've been trapped here all this time, unable to find my way home." With tears in her eyes, Ashley stepped forward, extending her hand toward the ghostly girl. "We'll help you, dear. We'll help you find peace." As we held hands with the lost spirit, a soothing warmth enveloped us. The cries for help began to fade, replaced by a sense of tranquility and acceptance. "I can feel it," the girl said softly. "I can feel myself finally moving on." With those words, her form began to fade, and the room filled with a soft, radiant light. The lost soul had found her way to the other side, and the house fell into silence once more. As we emerged from the hidden chamber, a sense of closure washed over us. The haunting cries had ceased, and we knew that the lost soul had finally found peace. In the weeks that followed, the house seemed to lose its somber atmosphere. The walls no longer whispered in anguish, and the nights became peaceful once more. Ashley, Hazel, and I felt a newfound connection to the house, knowing that we had helped a tormented spirit find solace. The past could no longer haunt us, and our home became a place of warmth and love once again. My friends and I set out on a camping trip deep into the heart of the woods. Alex, Mia, and Ben were my closest companions, and we were thrilled to escape the hustle of city life for a weekend of adventure in nature. Little did we know that our idyllic trip would soon become a chilling tale of the supernatural. As we pitched our tents and gathered around the campfire, laughter and excitement filled the air. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting an ethereal glow over the surrounding forest. But as the hours passed, a sense of unease began to settle among us, as if the woods were holding on to a long-forgotten secret. "Did you hear that?" Alex asked, his voice hushed. We all turned to listen, but the forest seemed eerily silent. Just as we were about to dismiss his concern, the cry of a distant voice echoed through the trees, a haunting wail that sent shivers down our spines. "Is that a cry for help?" Mia whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Without a second thought, we followed the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The cries grew louder, leading us deeper into the woods, where tangled branches reached out like skeletal fingers. As we ventured further, the atmosphere grew suffocating, and a sense of dread gnawed at our hearts. The chilling cries intensified, mingled with desperate pleas for rescue. "Someone must be in trouble," Ben said, his voice resolute. "We have to find them." With a shared determination, we pressed on, guided by the otherworldly cries. But the deeper we went, the more twisted the woods became, as if they were leading us into their very heart. Suddenly, we stumbled upon a clearing, a place that seemed to defy all natural laws. The moon's light was swallowed by an oppressive darkness, and the air was heavy with malevolence. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches contorted like the limbs of a trapped soul. Underneath the tree lay a shallow grave, and the cries for help emanated from within. Fear gripped us, and we hesitated for a moment, but the urgency in the voice pushed us forward. As we started to dig, the earth seemed to resist, as if the ground itself was protecting whatever was buried beneath. With every scoop of dirt, the cries grew louder and more anguished. Our hearts pounded in our chests, and a chilling wind seemed to rise from nowhere. Finally, we unearthed a weathered wooden box. As we opened it, the cries reached a deafening crescendo. Inside, we found a tattered journal and a locket adorned with a faded photograph. Shaking hands picked up the journal, and I started to read the haunting words penned by a tormented soul. I was lost in these woods, pursued by a malevolent presence. They called it the Wailing Woods, a place where the souls of the damned were trapped in eternal torment. I sought refuge, but the darkness claimed me, and my pleas for help were swallowed by the woods themselves. The journal's author described a ritual to appease the malevolent spirits and escape the cursed woods. But as we read on, we realized that the ritual had failed, dooming the author to an eternity of anguish. As I looked up from the journal, the cries ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that pierced the night. The locket in my hand felt heavy, and I couldn't help but open it. Inside was a faded photograph of the journal's author, a man whose sorrowful eyes seemed to penetrate my very soul. "We need to leave," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. But before we could retreat, the ground beneath us trembled, and the trees around us contorted into grotesque shapes. The oppressive darkness seemed to come alive, enveloping us in its suffocating embrace. In a panic, we turned and ran, our hearts pounding as if they would burst from our chests. But no matter how far we ran, the haunting cries followed us, as if they were etched into the very fabric of the woods. Hours turned into an eternity as we tried to find our way back, but the woods seemed to shift and rearrange themselves, trapping us in their heartless grasp. The cries grew louder, more desperate, as if the spirits of the cursed woods were taunting us. Exhausted and defeated, we huddled together, the weight of the woods bearing down on us. As we clung to each other, a realization washed over us. The cries for help were not just from the lost souls of the past. They were now ours, trapped in the malevolent clutches of the Wailing Woods. In that moment, we understood that we were destined to join the tormented spirits in their eternal lament, a fate sealed by our curiosity and the chilling secrets we had uncovered. And so we remained trapped in the haunted embrace of the Wailing Woods, our cries blending with those of the lost souls who came before us. We are forever bound to this malevolent realm, a haunting warning to all who dare to venture into the heart of the darkness and unlock the chilling secrets hidden within the wood's ancient embrace. The night was dark and stormy, with rain pounding against the windshield as Mark, Alex, and I set out on a night drive. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, a chance to escape the stresses of our everyday lives. Little did we know that this seemingly innocent adventure would lead us to the edge of terror. The rain intensified, and the headlights struggled to penetrate the veil of darkness. Despite the adverse weather, we felt an exhilarating rush as we sped along the empty, winding road. The familiar landmarks soon disappeared behind us, leaving us engulfed in an unfamiliar wilderness. Mark, our adventure-loving friend, sat behind the wheel, steering with determination. Alex, the tech-savvy guy, had set up a playlist of eerie music that added to the eerie atmosphere of the night. "Hey, this is perfect for the mood," Alex exclaimed as an unsettling melody filled the car. Laughter and excitement filled the confined space of the car, but the road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, leading us into an endless abyss of darkness. As time went on, the rain began to lessen, and the road became shrouded in a dense fog. Mark squinted, trying to see through the mist, but the visibility was rapidly decreasing. "We should probably turn back," I suggested, feeling an unease settle in the pit of my stomach. "Nonsense, the adventure has just begun," Mark replied, his voice tinged with defiance. I exchanged a worried glance with Alex, who nodded in agreement. We were hesitant, but didn't want to dampen Mark's enthusiasm. The fog grew thicker and the road became treacherous. Uneven terrain and sharp turns made the journey nerve-wracking. Despite the unnerving conditions, Mark pressed on, determined to explore the unknown. It felt like hours had passed, but the GPS indicated that we had only been driving for 30 minutes. Time seemed distorted, as if we had entered a realm outside the realm of ordinary reality. Suddenly, Mark slammed on the brakes, causing the car to screech to a halt. My heart raced as I looked around, trying to make sense of what had happened. "What's wrong?" Alex asked, his voice quivering with concern. "I don't know. I thought I saw something in the road," Mark replied, his eyes wide with fear. I peered out the window, but the dense fog obscured my vision. A chill ran down my spine, and I had an inexplicable feeling that we were not alone. Mark cautiously stepped out of the car, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the fog. There, just a few feet away, lay an old, weather-beaten road sign covered in moss and dirt. "Guys, this is strange. According to the sign, we're on the same road we started on," Mark said, his voice trembling. "What do you mean? We've been driving for miles," Alex exclaimed. As we looked around in confusion, a wave of panic washed over us. It was true. The landscape around us seemed eerily familiar, as if we had been going in circles. "Okay, this is getting too creepy. Let's turn back now," I pleaded. Mark nodded, his bravado waning in the face of the unsettling events. But when he tried to start the car, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in, and we frantically attempted to figure out what was wrong, but the engine remained silent. "We have to get out of here one way or another," Alex said, his eyes darting around nervously. Leaving the car behind, we decided to walk back the way we came, hoping to find a way out of the nightmarish loop. With each step, the fog seemed to grow denser, and the eerie silence was broken only by the sound of our hurried footsteps. As we trudged forward, the air became heavy, and a haunting silence fell upon us. The forest around us seemed to shift, and strange shadows danced in the periphery of our vision. I felt a presence watching us, an intangible malevolence that sent shivers down my spine. It was as if the very woods themselves were alive with a sinister force, mocking our attempts to escape. In the distance, we caught glimpses of shadowy figures among the trees. They appeared and disappeared like phantoms, leaving us questioning our sanity. "We need to stick together," Mark said, trying to sound confident. But his trembling hands betrayed his fear. As we pressed on, the fog seemed to form shapes, twisted faces, claw-like hands, and other unnameable horrors. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild, but deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the fog cleared, revealing an ancient, dilapidated cabin standing before us. It looked abandoned, its wooden walls rotting away. "I don't like this," Alex whispered, fear evident in his voice. But there was no other option. The road behind us had vanished, and the cabin was the only shelter we could find. Cautiously, we approached the cabin, its creaking door inviting us inside. The interior was just as decrepit as the exterior, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling and an overpowering musty smell. "We can't stay here. We need to find a way out," I said, my voice shaking. But before we could make a decision, the door slammed shut with a force that sent us stumbling backward. Terror gripped us as the walls of the cabin seemed to close in, suffocating us. The air grew thick with an oppressive malevolence, and the temperature plummeted. "We have to get out of here," Mark yelled, trying to force the door open. But it was futile. The cabin had become a trap, a living nightmare that fed on our fear. As the walls closed in and the darkness swallowed us whole, I could feel a cold presence enveloping us, dragging us into the depths of despair. And then everything went black. When I awoke, I found myself back in the car, parked by the side of the road. The rain had stopped and the fog had lifted, revealing the familiar landscape. Mark and Alex were still unconscious beside me, but they were alive. Relief washed over me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the road had taken something from us, something we would never fully understand. As we drove away from that accursed road, I glanced back one last time, knowing that the haunting road would forever be etched in my nightmares. The road that led us to the edge of terror, where reality blurred, and the boundaries of our world and the unknown became intertwined, would haunt me for the rest of my days. From that day on, we never spoke of the night drive gone wrong, but the memory of the haunting road would forever remain etched in our minds, a reminder that some places are best left unexplored, for the darkness that lurks in the shadows may never truly let go. The night was dark and moonless as I embarked on a solitary drive through the desolate countryside. The rain had just started to fall, casting shimmering streaks of light across the windshield. I loved the tranquility of the open road at night. It gave me a sense of freedom, a chance to escape the monotony of daily life. As I drove deeper into the darkness, the rain intensified and the road became harder to navigate. My headlights cut through the heavy downpour, revealing nothing but an endless expanse of shadow and mist. I glanced at the clock. 1 a.m. The realization that I was alone on a deserted road at this ungodly hour sent a shiver down my spine. But I pressed on, determined to reach my destination, a remote cabin nestled deep within the woods. It was a place I had inherited from a distant relative, and I planned to spend the weekend there, seeking solace from the pressures of city life. As I continued my journey, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The rain seemed to obscure more than just my vision. It obscured my sense of direction. I checked the GPS on my phone, but there was no signal. Panic started to gnaw at the edges of my mind, but I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, standing motionless on the side of the road. My heart skipped a beat and I instinctively slammed on the brakes, bringing my car to a screeching halt. As I strained to see through the rain-drenched windshield, the figure slowly emerged from the shadows. A young girl, no older than 10, stood before me. She wore a tattered dress and had an ethereal quality about her, as if she were a specter from another time. My concern for her well-being overrode my fear, and I rolled down my window. "Are you okay? What are you doing out here in the middle of the night?" I asked, my voice trembling. The girl's eyes were hauntingly vacant, and she spoke in a whispery voice that sent chills down my spine. "Can you take me home?" "Sure, but where is your home?" I inquired, trying to remain calm. Her pale hand pointed towards a dirt road that veered off into the woods. "It's just down that path." An unsettling feeling washed over me, and I hesitated for a moment. The road she pointed to was barely visible, swallowed by darkness and overgrown vegetation. "I can't drive on that road, it's too narrow and dangerous," I explained, hoping she would understand. But she persisted, her voice growing more urgent. "Please, you have to take me there. I can't find my way home alone." Guilt tugged at my heartstrings, and against my better judgment, I agreed to help her. She climbed into the back seat, and the car suddenly felt colder, as if an otherworldly presence had joined me. As I turned onto the narrow path, the rain intensified, and the trees closed in around us. The headlights illuminated twisted branches that seemed to reach out like gnarled fingers. I could feel an invisible force tugging at my soul, warning me to turn back, but the girl's pleas kept me moving forward. After what felt like an eternity, we arrived at a dilapidated house, hidden deep within the woods. It was a desolate place, the windows boarded up and the walls covered in ominous symbols. "This is it," the girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. Before I could say anything, she vanished from the back seat. Fear gripped me, and I slammed my foot on the gas, desperate to escape the haunting scene. As I sped away, the rain showed no sign of abating, and the road seemed to stretch on forever. Panic set in as I realized that I was lost, trapped on an endless loop of dark, twisting roads. Every time I turned, the same eerie landscape greeted me. Foreboding trees, dilapidated houses, and the chilling feeling of being watched. I tried to call for help, but my phone remained stubbornly without signal. The more I drove, the more I became disoriented, and the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. Through the rain-drenched windshield, I saw shadows moving in the periphery of my vision. Shapes and forms materialized from the mist, and grotesque figures seemed to dance at the edge of my headlights. I wanted to escape, to wake up from this sinister dream, but the road showed no mercy. My fuel gauge hovered dangerously close to empty, and exhaustion weighed heavily on my eyelids. I knew I couldn't keep going like this, but the road refused to offer a way out. As the night wore on, a strange feeling of familiarity washed over me. It was as if I had been here before, as if this nightmare road was a recurring vision from my deepest fears. But I couldn't comprehend how or why. With my last ounce of strength, I pulled over and turned off the engine. The rain pounded on the roof like a symphony of terror. I closed my eyes and tried to collect my thoughts, to find a way out of this nightmarish loop. Then a voice, soft and melodic, resonated through the car. "You can't leave. This is where you belong." I opened my eyes to see the young girl sitting next to me in the passenger seat, her eyes now dark and hollow. The terror I felt in that moment was indescribable. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I am the road you're trapped on, the echoes of your fears," she replied, her voice an unsettling harmony of whispers. I realized that this was not a girl, but a manifestation of my own fears and insecurities. I had brought this nightmare upon myself, and the only way out was to confront it head-on. Summoning all my courage, I looked into her eyes and said, "I will not be defined by my fears. I will find my way out." With those words, the rain subsided and the road ahead cleared. The eerie landscape dissipated, and I found myself on a familiar stretch of highway. As I drove away from that nightmarish loop, a sense of liberation washed over me. I had confronted the darkness within, and in doing so, I had set myself free. From that night on, I never went on a night drive again. The road had forever changed me, a reminder of the thin line between reality and the horrors that lurk in the shadows of our minds. And though I may never fully escape the memory of that night, I have learned to embrace the darkness and face my fears, for it is only through confronting our inner demons that we find the strength to navigate the treacherous roads of life. My name is Samuel, a reserved and curious man with a penchant for ancient artifacts and obscure history. One fateful day, while rummaging through an antique shop, I stumbled upon an intricately carved obsidian box of unknown origin. Drawn to its mysterious allure, I purchased it, unknowingly inviting malevolence into my life. Once back home, I couldn't resist opening the box, unveiling a weathered parchment inscribed with cryptic symbols. My curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I attempted to decipher the ancient text. With an inadvertent whisper, I unwittingly invoked an entity far beyond my comprehension. That night, an ominous presence permeated my once serene abode. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air grew thick with malevolence. I brushed off the unease, blaming it on my vivid imagination. But as the days passed, bizarre occurrences shook me to the core. Objects levitated and crashed to the floor, and chilling whispers echoed through the halls. Sleep eluded me, and horrifying nightmares invaded my mind, leaving me drained and disoriented during the day. I knew then that I had unwittingly welcomed an otherworldly entity into my home. Desperate to reclaim my once peaceful life, I began researching ancient rituals and discovered a way to undo the summoning. Armed with newfound knowledge, I prepared a ritual to banish the malevolent presence back to the shadows from whence it came. But as I stood in the dimly lit room, chanting incantations from the dusty tome, an unsettling voice whispered in my ear. It was sultry, yet sinister, promising untold power and pleasures beyond imagination if I embraced it instead. Ensnared by the allure of the unknown, I hesitated, entertaining the forbidden proposition. The entity revealed itself as none other than Satan himself, offering me riches, influence, and dominion over the world in exchange for my soul. It was a devil's pact, and in my weakness I accepted. From that moment, my life spiraled into a nightmarish descent. My once gentle heart turned callous and cruel. Wealth and power flowed into my life like a river, but each drop was tainted with the suffering of others. As I reveled in the pleasures of darkness, my soul withered, and a deep emptiness consumed me. People around me noticed the change, the darkness that shrouded my once bright spirit. Friends and family distanced themselves, sensing the malevolence that now clung to my very essence. The whispers in the dark grew louder, urging me to commit unspeakable acts in the name of my newfound master. Haunted by guilt and regret, I searched for a way to undo my treacherous mistake. My soul yearned for redemption, but Satan held me firmly in his grasp. I knew I had to break free no matter the cost. In the depths of despair, a ray of hope shone through. I encountered a wise old sage who saw past my wicked exterior and recognized the pain within. He revealed the only way to break the devil's hold, an act of selfless sacrifice. Gathering every ounce of strength, I confronted the entity that held my soul captive. Defying Satan, I offered to release myself from his clutches in exchange for the freedom of another innocent soul. The devil agreed, reveling in the prospect of gaining one more soul for his legion. But as the bargain was struck, a blinding light surrounded me, and an ethereal presence filled the room. It was an emissary from the divine realm, here to claim my soul and release me from the darkness. With a victorious grin, I witnessed Satan's rage as he realized he had been outwitted. As the divine presence lifted me from the clutches of darkness, my soul was cleansed, and a sense of peace enveloped me. I am now an old man, reflecting on the choices I made in my youth. My life has been one of trials and tribulations, but through darkness, I found light. The scars of my past will never fade, but the lessons I've learned are now my guide. The obsidian box remains hidden, a constant reminder of the malevolence I once invited into my life. Its contents will forever be guarded, a secret passed down through generations, a warning to those who dare to seek the forbidden. And so I implore you, dear reader, heed my cautionary tale. The allure of power and the unknown may tempt you, but the price you pay may be far too great. Seek the light, for it is in the shadows that darkness thrives, waiting to consume the unsuspecting soul. It all began on a chilly autumn evening. My friends and I, Marcus, Sarah, and Jack, were exploring an old abandoned mansion, a decrepit relic said to be cursed. Despite the warnings from the locals, we couldn't resist the allure of adventure. Little did we know that this reckless decision would change our lives forever. As we stepped through the mansion's rusted iron gates, an unsettling sense of dread washed over me. The air felt heavy, and the moon's silvery light cast eerie shadows that seemed to dance along the walls. The mansion's facade was a haunting sight, its once grand architecture now reduced to a darkened silhouette. We ventured inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness like fragile beams of hope. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet, and the old walls groaned in response to our intrusion. Sarah, our self-proclaimed paranormal enthusiast, was convinced that there was something unnatural about this place. "Guys, I can feel it," she whispered, her voice quivering. "There's a malevolent presence here." "Oh, come on, Sarah, don't scare us," Jack said, trying to maintain his composure. Marcus, always the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "It's just an old house, probably a bunch of rats or something." As we explored deeper into the mansion, we stumbled upon an ancient, ornate door tucked away in a hidden corner. It stood out, untouched by time, as if waiting for us to find it. Intrigued and consumed by curiosity, we pushed open the door, revealing a room that defied all logic. Before us lay an inexplicable sight, a swirling vortex of darkness, an abyss that seemed to stretch infinitely. The air around the portal felt suffocating, and the temperature plummeted. Despite the chilling atmosphere, an unexplainable pull drew us closer like moths to a flame. "No way, this can't be real," I stammered. Jack was the first to step closer, his eyes locked onto the dark vortex. "I wonder where it leads." Sarah grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't be foolish, Jack. We shouldn't mess with this." But curiosity got the better of us, and one by one we found ourselves standing at the edge of the swirling abyss. Marcus reached out a hand hesitantly, and his fingers disappeared into the dark void. A deafening roar echoed through the mansion, and before we could react, the portal's malevolent force sucked us in like a violent tempest. As we tumbled through the void, our screams were swallowed by the consuming darkness. When we awoke, we found ourselves in a desolate realm, a twisted, nightmarish landscape. The sky was a blood-red hue, and the ground beneath our feet was scorched and barren. The air reeked of sulfur, and a searing heat enveloped us. What is this place?" Sarah stuttered, her voice trembling with fear. "I don't know, but we need to find a way out of here," Jack said, his eyes darting around anxiously. As we walked through the surreal wasteland, an overwhelming sense of dread settled over us. Shadows danced on the periphery of our vision, and strange whispers filled the air, their words incomprehensible but undeniably malevolent. Days turned into weeks, and we lost track of time in this nightmarish realm. Our spirits dwindled, and the once unbreakable bond between us began to fracture. The oppressive atmosphere and the horrors we witnessed took their toll on our sanity. Then, one fateful night, we stumbled upon a group of grotesque creatures, twisted and deformed, their faces contorted with unimaginable suffering. They were drawn to us, their hollow eyes fixated on our souls. With newfound strength, fueled by terror, we ran for our lives, hoping to escape the clutches of these monstrous beings. But the more we ran, the more the landscape seemed to shift and change, trapping us in an endless maze of torment. I could feel my grip on reality slipping away, and the line between nightmare and waking life blurred. My friends, once familiar faces, now looked like mere echoes of their former selves. As we continued to struggle for survival, we discovered a long-forgotten journal hidden among the ruins of a crumbling temple. Its pages revealed the horrifying truth about the portal we had inadvertently opened. It was a gateway to hell, a place of eternal suffering, where lost souls wandered in eternal torment. Despair engulfed us, but we clung to the hope that we could find a way back home. Every step was a battle against the malevolent forces of this cursed realm. We encountered demonic entities that toyed with our minds, exploiting our deepest fears and regrets. In the end, only two of us remained, Marcus and I. Sarah and Jack were claimed by the darkness, their souls devoured by the abyss. The guilt weighed heavily on my heart, but we had no time for mourning. Driven by a desperate will to survive, Marcus and I pressed on, our bodies battered and our spirits broken. But as we journeyed deeper into this infernal landscape, I began to sense something different about Marcus. His once rational demeanor had given way to a manic obsession, a hunger for power to conquer this realm. I knew he was changing, succumbing to the malevolent influences of this place, and in a twisted turn of events, he revealed his plan to become a conduit of darkness, to harness the power of hell itself. Terrified of what he might become, I confronted Marcus, pleading with him to abandon his dark ambitions. But he was beyond reason, consumed by madness and the allure of power. With a heavy heart, I made a painful decision. I could not let Marcus bring this darkness back into the world. As he chanted dark incantations, I lunged at him, pushing him into the abyss. I watched helplessly as he disappeared into the consuming darkness. Alone and weary, I stood on the precipice of hell. I knew there was no way back, no escape from this eternal nightmare. So, with a heavy heart and tearful eyes, I embraced the darkness, knowing that this was now my eternal home. And so, my tale ends here, in the realm of suffering, where my soul is eternally trapped, and my consciousness entwined with the horrors of hell. If you ever come across the abandoned mansion, I implore you, heed my warning and never venture near that cursed place, lest you be drawn into the abyss of torment as we were. For in this malevolent realm there is no hope, no redemption, only the ceaseless cycle of suffering for those unfortunate souls who dare to cross the threshold into the depths of hell. I never thought a simple camping trip with my friends would turn into a nightmare. It all started when we decided to venture into the heart of the infamous Wicked Woods, a forest shrouded in mystery and terror. We were young and adventurous, seeking an adrenaline rush. But little did we know what horrors awaited us. The five of us, Mark, Sarah, Jake, Lily, and myself, set out on a sunny Friday morning, full of excitement and laughter. Armed with tents, backpacks, and a spirit of camaraderie, we marched into the dense foliage. The scent of damp earth filled the air as we trudged deeper into the woods, the sun's rays gradually dimming behind the thick canopy. Hours passed, and the once familiar path seemed to twist and turn into an unfamiliar labyrinth. Panic crept into our hearts as we realized we were lost. GPS signals were non-existent, and we had no choice but to keep moving, hoping to find civilization soon. Night descended upon the woods like a thick blanket, and the atmosphere turned eerie. Shadows danced on the trees, and every rustle in the bushes sent shivers down our spines. But we pushed forward, too scared to halt our journey and confront the unknown. The night grew colder, and a sense of foreboding overwhelmed us. Our flashlights flickered, casting fleeting glimmers on the ancient trees that loomed overhead. As we stumbled through the dark, we stumbled upon an abandoned cabin nestled within a clearing. It seemed like a sanctuary amidst the wilderness, a chance to rest and regain our bearings. Hesitant but desperate, we entered the cabin, which creaked ominously with each step. Inside, we found remnants of old furniture and belongings, all coated with a thick layer of dust. The atmosphere was heavy, and an inexplicable heaviness lingered in the air. As the night wore on, the sense of being watched grew stronger. Whispers seemed to echo through the walls, indiscernible yet undeniably present. We tried to ignore them, attributing them to our frayed nerves, but deep down we knew something was amiss. When morning finally came, we decided to leave the cabin and continue our journey. But the forest seemed to have transformed during the night. The once familiar landmarks were gone, replaced by twisted trees and gnarled roots that seemed to reach out for us. We had wandered deeper into the heart of the Wicked Woods, and escape seemed impossible. With each passing hour, the whispers grew louder, and shadows danced malevolently around us. Paranoia set in, and we started to turn on each other, blaming one another for leading us astray. Tensions ran high, and our friendship began to crumble under the weight of fear and uncertainty. In the distance, we saw strange figures moving among the trees, silhouettes that seemed almost human, but wrong in some way. They moved with unnatural speed, and whenever we tried to approach them, they disappeared into the darkness. As night fell once again, we found ourselves drawn back to the cursed cabin, as if some unseen force compelled us to return. We knew we had to resist, but our willpower was eroded by exhaustion and terror. Inside the cabin, the whispers were deafening. They filled our minds with nightmarish visions and macabre thoughts. Sarah started chanting nonsensical words, her eyes glazed over with a manic glint. Mark and Jake tried to calm her down, but she seemed possessed by an unseen malevolence. Lily and I huddled in a corner, seeking solace in each other's presence. But even in each other's arms, the fear gnawed at us like a relentless predator. We knew we were no longer alone in the cabin. Shadows danced on the walls, growing more defined and corporeal with each passing moment. One by one, the figures we had seen in the woods materialized before us. They were spectral beings, their faces twisted in anguish and rage. They reached out to us, their bony fingers inches from our trembling bodies. It was as if they were seeking to claim us, to add us to their haunted ranks. Lily and I made a desperate escape attempt, pushing past the sinister apparitions and fleeing into the forest. We ran for what felt like an eternity, our lungs burning and our hearts pounding. But the wicked woods seemed to stretch infinitely, and no matter how fast we ran, we couldn't escape its grasp. Eventually, we found ourselves back at the cabin, defeated and terrified. The others were nowhere to be found, swallowed by the malevolent woods. We were alone, left to suffer in this cursed place. As I sit here now penning this tale, I know that the wicked woods will forever haunt me. The whispers persist, and the shadows linger in the corners of my vision. I don't know if I'll ever escape this place, but I hope that my words serve as a warning to those who dare to venture into the heart of darkness. The forest loomed before me, its ancient trees clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The air was heavy with an unnatural silence as I stepped into its depths, the crunch of leaves beneath my boots echoing like distant screams. I was an explorer, drawn to the mysteries of the world, and this forest had long held a dark reputation among the locals. As the days passed, the sun seemed to dim, and the forest swallowed me whole. My compass spun aimlessly, and my sense of direction vanished. It was as if the forest itself played tricks on me, leading me further into its grasp. Panic gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity. Soon the days blurred into an indistinguishable nightmare. The forest became a labyrinth of twisted branches and looming shadows. I felt a constant presence, the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Strange sounds echoed through the trees at night, whispers, rustling leaves, and haunting cries that chilled my soul. Each day I woke to find crude symbols carved into nearby trees, seemingly following my path. Fear clung to me like a shroud, and sleep became a fleeting luxury. I was a prisoner of the forest, ensnared by some malevolent force that reveled in my suffering. My supplies dwindled, and desperation clawed at my sanity. I considered turning back, but the forest had warped my sense of direction. I had no idea which way led to safety. My mind became a battleground between hope and despair, and the latter seemed to gain the upper hand with each passing day. My reflection in a murky stream showed a hollowed version of myself, eyes haunted, cheeks gaunt, and a beard unkempt. The forest had taken its toll, eroding the man I once was. I realized I was not just lost physically, but spiritually as well, trapped in a realm between the living and the dead. In the darkest moments, I saw apparitions flit through the trees, whispering my name and beckoning me to join them. Their faces were contorted in agony, their eyes hollow and empty. The spirits of those who had perished in this cursed forest, forever trapped in its clutches. I tried to flee these haunting visions, but they followed me like specters, tormenting me relentlessly. Reality and illusion merged, and I could no longer discern what was real and what was a product of my tortured mind. As I trudged on, driven by an animalistic survival instinct, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in a sickly green light. In the center stood an ancient gnarled tree oozing a black sap that seemed to pulse with malevolence. As I approached, the air grew thick with foreboding, and the haunting whispers intensified. My heart pounded in my chest as I recognized the symbols carved into the tree's bark, the same symbols that had followed me throughout the forest. Before I could process the significance, the shadows around the tree seemed to coalesce into a sinister figure. A malevolent spirit emerged, its eyes blazing with hatred. It was the embodiment of the forest's darkness, an ancient entity that fed off the fear and suffering of lost souls like mine. I was paralyzed with terror, unable to escape its grasp. In my darkest moment, a memory from my childhood surfaced, a lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me. With trembling lips, I began to hum the haunting melody. To my surprise, the spirit faltered, recoiling from the sound as if in pain. Summoning all the strength I had left, I sang the lullaby louder, the words flowing from my memory. The forest itself seemed to shudder, and the malevolent spirit wailed in agony. Energized by this newfound power, I continued to sing, my voice echoing through the trees. The forest fought back, trying to drown out my song with its sinister whispers, but I persisted. As I sang, the symbols on the tree began to glow, and the spirit's form wavered like a mirage. With one final surge of determination, I released the melody at its full force. In a blinding flash of light, the malevolent spirit dissipated and the haunting whispers ceased. The forest fell silent, and the sickly green light faded, leaving only the pale moon to guide my way. I stumbled out of the forest, weak and disoriented. My body bore the scars of my harrowing journey, but my spirit felt unburdened. The forest had taken its toll, but I had emerged victorious. Word of my miraculous return spread, and soon a team of rescuers ventured into the forest to investigate. They found no sign of the malevolent spirit or the haunting symbols. To them it was just an ordinary forest, albeit a treacherous one, but I knew the truth. The forest held secrets beyond their comprehension, a malevolence that could only be defeated by confronting one's deepest fears. I emerged a changed man, haunted by the horrors I had faced, yet empowered by the strength I discovered within myself. Even now, as I recount this tale, I feel the lingering presence of the haunted forest. Its shadows stretch across my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that dwells within us all. And while I have escaped its clutches physically, the haunting memory of those 5 weeks will stay with me forever, a testament to the horrors that can be found in the most unexpected places. I remember that night vividly, like a haunting melody etched into my mind. It was a moonless night, and the countryside road stretched before me, black as the void. The only source of illumination came from my car's dim headlights, revealing a narrow path through the dense woods that seemed to close in on me, as if the trees themselves were reaching out to ensnare my soul. My heart pounded in my chest, and an inexplicable sense of unease filled my being as I drove further into the darkness. There was an air of foreboding, and an eerie silence enveloped everything. No nocturnal creatures dared to venture out on this night. It was as if they sensed the malevolence lurking in the shadows. I was a man of reason, not one to believe in superstitions or ghost stories. But that night, something felt different. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, that some unseen presence was observing me from the shadows. My hands clenched the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as I tried to keep my focus on the road ahead. I decided to turn on the radio, hoping that the sound of human voices would offer some comfort. However, all I could hear was static, broken occasionally by eerie whispers that sent shivers down my spine. I quickly turned it off, realizing that the silence was preferable to those haunting sounds. The road seemed endless, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was going in circles. The trees looked hauntingly familiar, like ancient sentinels guarding a forbidden realm. I glanced at the clock. It was well past midnight, and I couldn't believe how much time had passed since I set out on this journey. As if on cue, my car sputtered and the engine choked, threatening to die out. Panic gripped me as I desperately tried to restart the car. After a few terrifying moments, the engine roared back to life, but my heart still pounded in my chest. I felt like an intruder in this dark and desolate landscape, unwanted and unwelcome. Finally, I came upon an old and abandoned gas station. The sight offered a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there would be someone there who could help me. I parked my car and stepped out, feeling the cold night air envelop me like a shroud. The gas station appeared as if frozen in time, a relic from a forgotten era. The sign creaked and groaned in the wind, its flickering neon lights casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. As I cautiously approached, a sense of dread washed over me, urging me to turn back and flee this forsaken place. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay lingered in the air. Broken shelves lay scattered about, and a layer of grime covered everything. It was as if the station had been abandoned for decades, yet there was something unsettlingly recent about it. A sound echoed from the back of the station like footsteps on worn linoleum. My heart raced and I called out, my voice echoing through the empty building. "Is anyone here?" No response. I could feel the weight of eyes on me, but the source of the gaze remained hidden. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape this nightmarish place, but I couldn't abandon the hope of finding help. I ventured further, pushing open a door that led to a small office. The flickering light bulb overhead cast an eerie glow, revealing a row of dusty gas cans and old yellowed newspapers scattered across a desk. And there, sitting in the corner, was a tattered leather-bound journal. I picked it up, intrigued by the find. Flipping through its pages, I realized it belonged to the station's former owner. His ramblings spoke of strange happenings, of dark rituals conducted under the moonless sky, and of a malevolent entity that haunted these woods. The more I read, the more the feeling of being watched intensified. It was as if the very essence of the journal's author had seeped into the words, and now his presence lingered around me like a vengeful specter. Frightened, I hurried back to my car and started the engine, determined to leave this place and never look back. But as I turned the key, the headlights flickered, then died, plunging me back into darkness. Panic set in, and I tried again and again to start the car, but to no avail. I was trapped, a helpless victim in this eerie nightmare. In the rearview mirror, I saw a faint glimmer of light approaching from behind, drawing closer with every passing moment. It was then that I noticed something standing in the distance, just beyond the reach of my car's dead headlights. It was tall and shadowy, with piercing red eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. Frozen with fear, I couldn't tear my gaze away from this ghastly figure. The journal's words echoed in my mind, warning of the malevolent entity that roamed these woods. I had stumbled upon something beyond human comprehension, and now I was paying the price for my curiosity. In a final act of desperation, I grabbed the journal and fled from my car into the woods, the entity's haunting presence following me like a malevolent shadow. Branches whipped at my face as I ran, my heart pounding in my ears, and my breaths ragged. Time seemed to lose all meaning as I stumbled through the darkness. The woods twisted and turned around me, leading me deeper into their heart, as if intent on claiming me as their own. My strength waned, and I felt myself succumbing to exhaustion. Then, just when all hope seemed lost, I stumbled upon a small cabin hidden amidst the trees. It was old and weathered, but a dim light emanated from within. I pounded on the door, praying that someone would answer. To my relief, an elderly man opened the door, his eyes widening in surprise at the sight of me. "Please," I gasped, "help me. Something's out there. Something evil." The man ushered me inside, and as the door closed, a bone-chilling howl echoed through the night. The old man looked at me gravely, his face etched with sorrow. "You've encountered the malevolence," he said. "It's a malevolent spirit that preys on lost souls, luring them deeper into the darkness until they become one with the woods themselves." He explained that the journal I found belonged to his long-deceased brother, who had also fallen victim to the malevolence. The cabin was now his sanctuary, where he tried to protect others from meeting the same fate. As the night wore on, the howls of the malevolence echoed around the cabin, and I could feel its presence lurking just beyond the walls. The old man spoke of rituals and ancient knowledge passed down through generations to keep the malevolence at bay. But as the first rays of dawn illuminated the horizon, the haunting ceased, and the woods fell silent once more. The old man escorted me back to my car, warning me never to return to these woods and to forget all that I had witnessed. I drove away, my heart heavy with the weight of the night's horrors. The memory of the malevolence and the desolate night drive would forever haunt me,